So hello, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity of participating in this Congress and also for the organization. The work I'm going to present today has been developed in an international project called Synergia, Foodways in West Africa, an integrated approach on pots, plants, and animals. And it's the result of a collaboration between many researchers. As indicated on this slide, the presentation aims at offering a methodology to combine different approaches in order to investigate past uses of potteries and foodways. So foodways have been the focus of a variety of disciplines, but rarely are those approaches combined, at least not fully. You can work on archaeozoological data, so remains of bones, of shells, carpological data, microbiological analysis from ecofacts retrieved in the sediment, but you can also conduct studies directly on the pot, as pottery is a very porous material. You can have useware analysis, organic and microbiological residue in pottery vessels. Those approaches are complementary as they do not provide information on the same stages of food gathering, preparation, storage, and consumption. Therefore, conducting multi-proxy analysis on archaeological sites seems necessary to understand the entire food system. The reason for which this kind of studies are rarely conducted can lie in several limitations. First is the heterogeneity of the data and the degraded and fragmentary nature, depending on the sites where you can find the artifacts. In addition, each discipline has developed its own protocol, so you have to sample in adequacy with your own research questions, and often different conservation criteria are required for each approach. So mutualization of those data is a major challenge. In addition, there are only a few models to interpret culinary practices from the archaeological records, so ethno-archaeological investigation can provide some tools to help interpret archaeological data through the construction, for example, of a reference database built on current societies. It also allows us to determine the biases of the archaeological data. So to bypass this scientific bottleneck, this project Synergia carried investigations in Senegal, and especially in Lower Casamance, as you can see on the map, where food practices still rely in some villages on pottery vessels, which is very interesting because we had this field project that involved two parts. The first one was an ethno-archaeological study focusing on potteries and foodways. And the second one was an archaeological study on a dumping site, because we are, as archaeologists, use a lot of dumping sites. It's a dumping site for the 20th century called La Poubelle des Mamans, which means the mother's bin. And the site is close to a village where pottery is still in use. And the testimony of the elders can be compared to the archaeological record. So furthermore, this site is a coherent stratigraphic unit and presents both discarded food remains, for example, oyster shells or bones from animals, and the related material culture, such as pottery. The excavation of the site deliver over 1,000 bone remain, 2,746 sherds of pots, including 468 individualized pots, 37 archaeobotanical items, and 184 food residues, thus allowing multiple analyses to be conducted. So in order to conduct all the different analyses to reconstruct the function of each pot, we had to implement a method with an effective timeline. It was necessary as the different methods have expectations. So the offered methodology was to firstly conduct the morphometrical study on unwashed pots. And this is very important because then you can select the pots, which can be further analyzed depending on your research questions. The pots were then sent for organic residue analysis and phytolith analysis before being washed to conduct traceological studies of useware. And lastly, the archaeozoological study and carpological studies were conducted separately on the sediment of the dumping site. So as we are in a congress about young women in research, I would like to salute the work of all the young early career researchers on this study. Drieu, who conducted the organic residue analysis with me, Pauline Debels, who realized the morphometrical and user analysis, and Aline, Garnier and Valentine Fichet, who were in charge of the phytoliths analysis. The results of this study are in a submitted paper, and they showcase the importance of aquatic and terrestrial animals as well as plant products in this village diet. I would like to highlight two cases where the complementarity of those approaches was quite unmistakable. Firstly, question left open by the morphological analysis about the function of pottery vessels, so transport, storage, cooking, were answered by coupling the data with the organic residue analysis. So for example, we had a family, two groups of pots that presented more or less the same shape and the same decorative patterns, but different size, so bigger pots and smaller pots. The organic analysis showcased that those two groups had similar lipidic content, thus allowing the hypothesis of a similar function, in this case of cooking meat products, and the size might be explained for different uses, for example, in events of different scales, like festivals versus cooking at home. Moreover, this study gave us insight on the modalities of food transformation by assessing preparation techniques of animals and vegetal products. For example, the archaeozoological analysis provided evidence of charred bones and cutting, provided no evidence of charred bones, but showed cutting marks on the bones. And at the same time, the user analysis presented evidence of boiling, especially with acidic products like, for example, lemon juice and salted water, and charred residues. And the organic residue analysis completed this evidence with a significant lipidic signal and SUS evidences. So this data combined indicates a tradition of cooking the products in pots instead of directly over the fire, and most likely a boiling practice with lemon juice and or salty water, which is something we still observe today in the village. To go further in our reflection about food processes in this site, more complementary analyses will be conducted, such as isotopic and LCMS analysis to identify more precisely the origin of the animal fat in the pots. We will also study the butchery traces to provide information on cutting methods and, of course, a full ethnoarchaeological study of pottery function and food practices in this village in Lower Casamance to assess biases induced by the archaeological deposits. Thank you very much for your attention, and I think that now we have the question session.